line that is repeated in this report again and again is that the Minneapolis Police Department is engaged in race-based policing.
Yeah, the report found that racial disparities exist in how Minneapolis police officers use force, stop, search, arrest, and cite people of color, particularly African Americans. And it also went on to say MPD officers consistently use racist, misogynist, and disrespectful language, according to the report that came out today. How is this going to impact the search for a new police chief?
Well, I think this report underscores the need for new leadership and underscores the search for a strong chief who is willing to tackle many, many challenges, from dealing with training of police officers to dealing with the body cam issues, to dealing with officers apparently going on social media to harass civic leaders, according to this report at least, to dealing with the mayor and city council members. So there is no shortage of challenges for the new police chief to tackle. And I think, if anything, this report, again, not only underscores the need for a strong chief, but lays out a pretty significant set of challenges that person will need to be prepared to tackle on day one.
Yeah, and we've heard a lot about the need for the culture to change within MPD, which sounds like a tall task. And I run into more and more people, and I'm just curious to get your take. You work in Minneapolis. I talk to a lot of people who say, "Look, I'm still not comfortable spending a lot of time downtown, whether it's Minneapolis or St. Paul, after dark. I just with the crime, the uptick in crime, the carjackings, I'm just not there yet." And so they go on to say, "Look, Paul, we need more police." And I don't argue that. But then the next question is, how do we attract police officers who are not going to violate somebody else's civil rights? I mean, is that such a tall order today?
Well, the report doesn't deal at all with the rising crime rate in Minneapolis. It doesn't attempt to deal at all with the current spike that we're seeing in violent crime. It does address the need to recruit and retain the right kinds of people and to hold accountable officers when they engage in misconduct, which the report claims is not happening at this point.
This is going to be a naive question, and I'm going to go off script. And look, I'm not involved. I have a small weather business, which is different. We're looking for meteorologists. We're not looking for police officers. But in the training and screening process, whether it's local police, state police, FBI, is there a way to detect patterns, or based on social media and other factors, kind of shine a spotlight on people who may have a tendency to be white supremacists or to have, racist overtones? And is it legal to weed people out of the process who want to be police officers based on what they've said in the past, what they've said on social media or anywhere? How do we weed out the bad apples?
That's going to be the question for the mayor, for the city council, for the next police chief, is how to weed out the bad apples. Not only how to stop the bad apples from applying or receiving job offers, but also from staying on the force. And so to your question, is it legal to ask those kinds of questions? Yes. Is it legal to extend offers to people who are not white supremacists, or on the other hand, not Black supremacists? Yes. Is it legal to look at people's social media postings to see if they have the right temperament for a particular job and will exercise their power judiciously? Yes. And of course, there's nuance in how one asks those questions, but the city is trained, and the city attorney's office is trained in how to do that. There are very specific allegations in this report about not only the lack of training, but the bad training that police officers are currently receiving. And so I I think the evidence here that the Minnesota Department of Human Rights has compiled over really a 10-year period is very significant. They looked at, I think, 500,000 documents, looked at body cam, looked at every use of force incident over the last decade almost. And so all of this has led to these findings about more severe force being used against African Americans, about the rate at which vehicles are stopped, differential treatment, at the excessive use of harsh deterrents like chemical sprays and the use of disorderly conduct or obstruction citations. All of that is cataloged comprehensively in this report. And I think that this is going to be used not only by the state of Minnesota, not only by the city of Minneapolis, but I think that this is going to be cited in the federal investigation, which is still ongoing.
You talked about social media. One of the things that made me do a double take, well, the whole thing made me do a double take, everything I've read in that 72-page report. But apparently, MPD used covert social media accounts to surveil, to monitor African Americans and African American organizations unrelated to criminal activity. Police falsely engaged with Black individuals, Black leaders, Black organizations. Is that legal? I mean, does that just come with the turf, or could there be some illegality there?
Well, the surveillance aspect is not necessarily illegal, and that is part of law enforcement's job, is to monitor what is happening in the community. The problem here is that the focus of the social media tracking was entirely on the African American community. So, for example, the report cites the fact that white supremacists and Nazi organizations were not being monitored by the police when we know they pose a threat to the social order. And so the disparate treatment that is revealed again and again in this report is one of the most problematic aspects of the findings by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights.
Rachel, we only have 30 seconds left. What do you think comes next? How does this change the arc of the future of MPD and getting some sense of normalcy back to Minneapolis and St. Paul?
The very next step is going to be to work with the city of Minneapolis to develop a consent decree that will be part of a court enforceable agreement, identifying specific changes that need to be made and the time in which they need to be made. But this report, make no mistake, is calling for radical change at the Minneapolis Police Department.
University of St. Thomas Law Professor Rachel Paulose. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor, and we'll keep in touch. Always enjoy your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot to unpack, and I believe the whole 72-page report is now online, so you can see it for yourself. When we come back, a double dose of Mike Max. There's almost too much sports. Not really, but we can say that. Yeah, almost too much sports when we come back on CCO.